Thank you. Thank you. A question for Mark. You were talking about the ongoing negotiations with the US. I'm wondering if we actually have an alternative as the EU. Like, how would our future look like if you're not able to negotiate this on these topics in a way that is aligned with our values? Because it sounds to me very much like, like now in Ukraine, they don't have an alternative to not fight, against Russia. Do we have an alternative to not negotiate on these important topics?
Well, that I said it because it was suggested, and is very often suggested, that one of the problems we're currently having is that, regrettably, and the Commission can't help it, so to speak, because now it's been constructed like that, the same unit, not the same unit within the Commission, but the same institution that, for example, is the enforcer vis-a-vis the big platforms, the very large online platforms and search engines, is also involved, for example, in trade negotiations with the US. And then the question is, what has been suggested also before is that there was this lack of enthusiasm so there is a suggestion that it might be difficult for us under the current geopolitical situation to fully commit to what we have written into the law. I'm saying it very careful. I would not go as far as saying the Commission is not doing what it needs to do, but maybe it could be sped up, and it must be very difficult. So yes, there is a choice to say we just don't enforce properly the law. Because if you enforce the law, somebody will take you to court. Okay, so all of these cases that are currently running, they will all end up, I think, at the court. That's just, that happened in competition law over 20 years, and it's going to happen here. But that's good, because then the court clarifies the powers of the Commission, how, they have to scrutinize everything. If you do it the other way around, you don't enforce, it's difficult to take it to court, for not taking action. So yes, the Commission could say, well, we've got a very complex situation, we're not going to investigate this further, or it's, we don't have enough evidence, we close the cases. National regulators could say we focus, for example, on illegal content that you just mentioned. It's actually quite a natural choice. Why think about disinformation where it might be difficult to prove? Maybe we just go against pornographic platforms, because there it's very clear that the access for minors without an age restriction is probably illegal. Or we go against platforms disseminating child sexual abuse material. You can do that. You can decide which battles you want to. I don't think we have a choice. That's why I'm advocating for it. This is the moment where we have to say, maybe in the US it's done differently, certainly in China it's done differently. Are we big enough as European Union to say we should do it our way? And I'm not naive. I'm not naive in a world of artificial intelligence where we have also not yet managed to live up to the expectation to have a powerhouse or many powerhouses in Europe yet. But either we give up on our regulations, honestly speaking, or we try in this moment of history. I guess you wanted to.
Without actually now addressing the broader geopolitical challenge beyond this, I just want to mention also that the Commission also takes pride in actually getting things done, even though sometimes they fly under the radar of the main newspaper titles. But we have seen very concrete action from the Commission side by initiating procedures and scrutiny against very large online platforms, imposing fines. There's also, we mentioned before, also the case of the Romanian elections. There is a procedure open on that matter. At the beginning of this year, there was also action taken against pornographic platforms. You can give a whole list of occasions on which now, on the basis of this rather young regulatory framework and developing practice around it, the Commission is taking concrete steps in order to assert the implementation of the rules we've put in place. So I'll stop here.
Magdalena, comment from you.
Just really quickly, because we are speaking about regulation, and always when we discuss disinformation and freedom of expression, we tend to focus on analyzing the content itself. I do believe we need to also move this discussion to analyze whether we can exercise our freedom of expression, even being a malicious actor, using the so-called TTPs that we analyze, so technique, tactics, and procedures. So, for example, can I exercise my freedom of expression using bot network? is it still within my human right as a person to lie? Because we know that bots do not have human rights, but whether can I do this? And this is also an approach that I would encourage.
It's great you're mentioning, because what I say is, if you want to play in our playground, you first read the rules and then you follow the rules. And to rely on freedom, if you do not believe in the freedom and you're actually trying to undermine it, is a problem. So I would fully agree with you, but from a legal, from an analytical perspective, this is a change. I mean, we've got provisions, for example, in the European Convention on Human Rights, where there is an issue like abuse of rights. Maybe we can go via that way. But there is no such thing that somebody who uses freedoms in a way that we do not agree with automatically can be excluded. I myself have been advocating in this direction, because I think that's the way we have to go. We have to say there is a condition to be able to rely on a fundamental rights framework, but we always have the recipients, right? So the recipients might say, but I want to get all this stuff. I want to get this information to make myself a picture out of it, right? And so if you don't allow it to be disseminated, I'm also being restricted in my freedom of information, not only the expression of the other one. So again, I'm not suggesting we should not act in this field. I'm just saying it's a very sensitive matter to do, which is why I liked many of the previous speakers saying we can't just rely on one institution like the European Commission. That's not going to work. It's not going to be fast enough. So yes, you mentioned several cases that have been brought to interim conclusions, but they are only interim, and that's except for one case which has already been closed, but now it's being attacked. So that takes time. We need this interplay with different levels. We need the member states, their digital services coordinators, to also act, even though they might not be in charge of the very large platforms. We also have to look at other institutions or organizations like the Council of Europe. It's noteworthy that in the Council of Europe, very recently, there have been documents agreed upon within the Committee of Ministers, building blocks on how to respond to disinformation. Again, it's not binding law, but it shows that there are many different places where this has come to a level of attention that we didn't know 10 years ago, I would say. So it's careful optimism that since we're discussing it in so many contexts, maybe something is happening. But one thing that has maybe been said a little bit too little, I think you mentioned at the beginning, is, can we only combat disinformation with rules that are enforced hopefully effectively and by saying we're different than the rest of the world, or do we not need a second layer? And I think the second layer shouldn't be underestimated, and that is the alternative. Good information, right? So media literacy was mentioned a lot, that we need to educate everyone from young to old to understand how to identify, for example, disinformation campaigns. But I personally think that the media as such is what you mentioned as a critical infrastructure, right? The free media, the idea that somebody publishes information with editorial responsibility, is still the best reaction to having a flood of information where we don't know who initiated it. Maybe it was even a bot. Has it been forged? Because a newspaper or a TV station or a radio station or an online media outlet will be very careful to fall into the trap of spreading information that they have not at least tried to verify, because then they're in trouble as well. So one alternative that I see, and that is happening as well, but maybe not yet enough, is to strengthen the traditional quote-unquote media sector. And there I also see a role for regulatory authorities. They are not just supervising, punishing, sanctioning, but they are leading also in enabling, was mentioned before, a sustainable media environment. And I think there is no alternative to that, because Pascal, you said before, our kids don't maybe know that at all anymore, this tradition. We can understand better because we knew there was another way of getting information. We have to make choices. I mean, these are societal choices where we say, is it at all possible that people get their own information on their own behalf from the vast amount of information on the internet? Or do we need gatekeepers which follow certain rules when they collect and disseminate information? And unsurprisingly, a professor in media law will opt for that, and there is a reason for that. I have not found a better alternative so far.
I just allow myself to rebound on that because, as I mentioned at the beginning of my contribution, then I am also somewhat this frontline worker in this area of hopefully providing the good information. And whereas from the European Commission policy side, I can fully align with what was said about strengthening media. And as I said, also the Democracy Shield includes measures to support economic viability and resilience of quality media providers and protecting the safety of journalists. Then on a very individual level, in my daily work, I see the need also for public institutions to adapt how we're communicating, how are we conveying our messages, because the patterns of receiving information are changing very rapidly. There is also growing distrust into the so-called official communicators, and this puts a very exciting challenge on public sector communicators of how can we tap into the emotions of people, all while maintaining our pragmatic, credible, data-based position. How can we get closer to people where they are, rather than hoping that they will click on the website of EC.Europa to look for a specific information? And in my daily work here in Luxembourg, we're doing this. We're trying to change. We're trying to get outside of the bubble of the usual suspects. We're currently carrying out a campaign which is actually leveraging street art for listening to local citizens' voices of what Europe means in their local community, through artistic workshops creating street art murals that will stay as a permanent landmarks and invitations to continue the conversation of what is the daily local grassroots implications of being European for you precisely. We're also relying very much on trusted authority figures like social media content creators that are credible, that can also amplify our message in a user-friendly edutainment type of way. And one new frontier that I'm seeing also where public communicators need to go with is how is the AI also affecting search for information, now that we're living the zero-click environment, when large language models are actually becoming a very important source for obtaining information, for searching for information, not the official clicks on the official websites. Are we ready to make sure that our content is designed in a way that it's easy to pick up linguistically and in the way it's structured for these AI models? And are we ready also to tackle the fact that, as I read in the newest EAS FEMA report, that these large language models are increasingly groomed by these malicious operators, actually flooding them with content that alters the search results that are being provided. So as I said, technological progress is advancing at an amazing speed, and this puts extra challenges on each and every one of us, starting from policy level to academics to regulators and to civil society. Everyone is part of this challenge. And I'm actually very proud that we are in a conversation where we are debating the flaws. We're addressing how to balance freedom of speech with regulatory and sanctions methods, because that means we actually are Europeans. We are, as we sit here, we are living the value of trying to be a democratic system which respects freedoms, all while defending this towards those that abuse it.